It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Absolutely, no problem.
So, before we get into Imaginary Eyes, I want to know, 4 years ago we were trying to wrap our heads around this pandemic. How are we going to get out of it? How long is it going to last? It really went through the creative community in a very specific way. How did you ultimately survive that time period? And how did it either influence this release or the way that you do things now?
Well, I survived that time period playing piano, pretty simply. Of course, I had, um, the health and safety of my family and my partner, which were really important. But I spent a lot of those early days sitting at the piano, without being able to gig or even like teach for the first few months of it, which are my other gigs. It just left me like whole days of time with nothing going on, and I just was sitting at the piano and allowing whatever wanted to come out, and that really helped me kind of pull through.
So, talk to me about this release. As a composer, you've been around for a while, you've done so many things. What does this release mean for you?
This release is the first thing I'm putting out under my name, Maxx
Yeah.
McGathey, and everything up until that point, except for like some film scores, but everything up until that point has been with bands and band names and project names. And so I was really trying to like really dig into what my style is and what I do personally, and what can really like represent me as a composer, as an artist. And so this album, Imaginary Eyes, is really just kind of allowing my imagination to run wild and get the sound that really excites me. And and what I landed on was this kind of mid 20th century studio orchestra kind of cinematic sound, which is just really used as like a sound world and a jumping off point, because there's a lot of other more contemporary, more modern um, influences that work within this music. But it's got a strong, heavy groove, which is something that I've always liked in music. Some kind of like a bass groove that's really strong, and rhythm section that really kind of takes the lead. It has some strings that are both used in a very kind of sublime, beautiful way, but also really disturbing, kind of intense way, which is something that really comes from my um, influences from that era of like thrillers, horror, suspense movies. A lot of Hitchcock movies have been a big influence on this, specifically the scores by Bernard Herrmann, who wrote the famous score for Psycho. And also some winds and lush melodies, lush arranging, and just like a sense of adventure in all of the music. I would say all of that together is kind of what makes it me and what I like to do.
So, as this being your initial shout out with your name on it, what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
I'm really hoping that that it really works with their imagination. I hope that they really find it fun to listen to and find it like an adventure, kind of like I really I love music that surprises me and that subverts expectations and that like lulls me to a nice daydream and then wakes me up, and all these different kind of dramatic um moments and dynamic moments. And so what I really hope is that it gets that across, and also as in terms of like a message of what I can do, I really hope it makes an impression on that I have a lot of music in me to put out into the world. And this being my first record, I'm already looking forward to the second one.
Right on. So, how did this journey begin for you? How did you get into the music? How did all of this evolve into where you're at today?
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I've been studying the piano since I was a little kid, and really took off. You know, I played classical when I was growing up, and then when I hit adolescence, made a bunch of musician friends, and that really kind of was like a renaissance for me. And I kind of never slowed down from that. From there, I started with rock because I grew up on my parents' like classic rock records, and but we were also a movie loving family, and so I always had that kind of cinematic music, especially classic films, black and white films, kind of going through my ears, even if I didn't recognize it right away. And ended up after going through rock, I learned jazz in school, and started really taking off with that, and also getting interested in kind of side genres, related genres to that, like funk, and that kind of all was culminating until I reached around the time I was in college, where I started my long running band called Gramps The Vamp. And this band was a 7 piece, uh, like horn driven, kind of groovy, like funky kind of band, taking after a lot of uh, funk and funk jazz from all through all decades, 70s, 80s, 90s, and more 21st century stuff. So that project was, we kind of just ended up developing that into uh, well, something that I'm really interested in, which is cinematic music. And then that kind of drove me into film scoring, kind of another side thing that I do. And all of these experiences, I would say, including a lot of collaborations in the Chicago music scene, including one called Dark Canyon, which is a spaghetti western album, which I was pretty instrumental on. Um, all these things kind of like, I would say, have just taught me what I know, and I've taken that forward into this album, and really kind of known what I've done in the past, and what I've uh, had an ambition to do in the future.
So, what's the first live show you ever saw that blew you away?
Hmm. Um, wow. Well, I'll one that comes to mind was I was in high school. I think I was like 16 or 17, and I'm lucky to have uh, parents, and specifically my dad, who loves live music. So he'd take me to a lot of live music growing up. And I think one that really blew me away was when I saw Medeski, Martin, and Wood for the first time. When was that? That must have been like 2003 or something like that. And it was at um, it was at the tent stage at Summer Camp Fest in Southern Illinois, and really fun festival. But I honestly was just there for Medeski, Martin, and Wood, because I had been getting really into it at that time, around the age of like 17 or so, and it blew me away because so they were so good on their feet, and so good at listening to each other, and just creating this like amazing vibe. And John Medeski, as a keyboard player myself, John Medeski is like one of the great creators, I think, on the instrument.
So, what do you like the best about being a musician and a composer? What is it that gets you up every day, and what is it that drives you to evolve as a musician?
Yeah, hmm, I think that I really love the sense of discovery, the sense of exploration. Like every time I sit down at the piano, I'm, even if I have something to work on, right? I am tempted to improvise. And I love improvisation. That's how I compose. I just play, and then something excites me. And so um the thing that really like makes me a musician, I think, is just that like love of exploration, and that love of like the the unknown, and finding something that really intrigues me and trying to make it the most intriguing I can make it. I'm always chasing after that feeling. And I also love I love performing. I love playing with others too, even if it's on a side or something, like if I'm a side man on a project. I love that too. But I think the real, like, you know, if you're if you had if you could do whatever you wanted for the rest of your life, I think it would just be like composing and exploring and trying to create new sounds that excite me.
So what's the greatest thing about creating in a city like Chicago?
I mean, Chicago, in my book, Chicago is the greatest city in the world. I love it here. I think that there's amazing musicians and creatives of all disciplines here, and you can just walk down the street and, hey, I saw you at that show, and just like start talking music with someone. It's really wonderful. And I think what I like about Chicago is that people are really focused here on the work and doing, like, internally, and just like in their community. It's just like making cool stuff, and less, there's admittedly less industry here than maybe like a New York or LA. And so I think that's actually kind of a benefit, because I think people are more focused on themselves and more focused on uh, the people that listen to their music, their communities, and their artistic journeys in internally. And I'm always really inspired by that. I can go to any venue. I love the venue Constellation. They always bring amazing um, new jazz and creative kind of music acts, and I just and there's a lot of those people that live right here in Chicago, so I love it. I love living in Chicago and making music here.
So why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because it's adventurous, and it really tells a story musically, um, especially with a lot of instrumental jazz. I like vocal jazz as well, but it, instrumentally, just hearing someone kind of express themselves with music notes and rhythms and melodies, and it's just enthralling to me, because that's my language. I feel like that's like my native tongue, and yeah, I love this sense of creativity. Like, there's not, you know, with I don't want to knock any area of jazz, because it's all valid and great, but there's a lot of really forward thinking stuff in jazz, and that's the side that I really like, taking what we've learned from the past and like trying to do something, retooling it and doing something new and different with it. Will always be the thing that I really love about it. And then of course the improvisation. I mean, it's something I love. It's when feel most alive is when I'm just like improvising.
So if you could get into a time machine and see one jazz show in the history of this art form, where are you going? Who would you see?
Hmm, that's a tough one. I would have to go back to one of the most inspiring pianists for me that I've ever heard, and that's Thelonious Monk. I would go see one of his concerts, probably with one of his bands from like the 50s, I would say,
Yeah.
sometime in there. But I just have I've been lucky to see a lot of great musicians, legendary musicians, but yeah, I mean, Thelonious is, I just love his style and the way he embraces like the abstract and like the ugly. I don't mean that in a pejorative way. He embraces like a sound that's kind of like grating and kind of dissonant, and makes it so musical. And I've really taken that to heart, just that kind of ethos of trying to find the beauty in dissonant work.
Yeah.
And so I just love to see him work. That'd be
Yeah, for
amazing. And
sure.
hear him work.
Yeah, for sure. So, Max, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, colleagues, everyone around you. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I think that I'm just someone who loves the music I'm making, and like will just keep working as hard as I can on it until it feels right to me. And yeah, a lot of that is me taking the lead and me putting in the time composing, putting in the time arranging, uh, putting in the time like getting the word out about gigs and organizing gigs and all the logistics. There's a lot of like logistical work that goes behind not only making an album like this, which has been a process of years, but getting a band together. And I take that descriptor as band leader pretty seriously. I really love that job. And part of that is also uh, getting people around you who you trust and who you respect in their talents. And so a lot of it um, is working with others, and I've learned a lot over the years about how to do that the right way and how to empower people to help with the overall vision that I bring to the project. And yeah, we just hope that people see me as somebody who has a vision for what they want to do and knows the steps to get it done.
So, if anyone wants to pick up a copy of Imaginary Eyes, catch you live, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, you can go to my Bandcamp page. That's a great platform because the more activity I get on there, the more it can snowball into something for the next album. So I would recommend checking out maxmcgathey.bandcamp.com or just searching Maxx McGathey. My first name has two X's in it, so it's MaxxMcGathey.bandcamp.com, and that's the best. And I've got links to my personal website, maxmcgathey.com, on there. Yeah, I'm active on Instagram, but and I have an email list. But yeah, all of that will be on the Bandcamp page. So if you just want one place to order the record, which by the way is a limited press, then you can go on there. And pre-orders are open now via my label, Moody Records.
Excellent. I'll put a link up there in the show notes. Max, this has been great, man. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Send my love to Chicago.
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.